and welcome, fellow viewers. Welcome to a fantasy-filled episode of Main Game, the show that puts the play in role-playing. I'm your host, Aoife.
And I'm your co-host, Lewis from Kakuchopurei.com. And over the past few episodes, we've talked about a lot of game genres, from competitive gaming all the way to racing games. But video games do have a major solo element to them. Some of the more popular games have you create your own character and go on adventures. Some have you take on the role of a predetermined spiky-haired hero with giant swords and go on fantastical journeys. Today's main quest of an episode, is dedicated to one particular genre of games that the whole of Asia adores, with one of our segments talking about the major influential franchise for a specific console game.
That's right, that genre is called the role-playing game and Japanese role-playing game, RPGs and JRPGs for short. But before we dive into that main quest, let's talk about game art making in our first segment, which is Lowdown. As we have said time and again in Main Game, creating video games is a lot of work. When you're a major game publisher and developer, having trusted allies from all over the world is important in making sure these games get shipped on time and are ready for playing.
That is true. The whole of Asia has a bunch of branching studios and support studios that help with creating big titles, like your Marvel Spider-Man or the next big Ubisoft generic sandbox game, or the long-delayed, probably not relevant anymore, pirate game.
So there's a lot of art assets and outsourcing for multiple games and sleepless nights, at times.
That's correct.
Sounds like a thankless job.
Well, pre-production and production for games are important, but being the very few reliable bastions when it comes to games that looks and aesthetics are very, very important, especially when there's a lot riding at stake.
All right, so without further ado, here is our look at Malaysia's own Lemon Sky Studios.
In the heart of Malaysia's rich and diverse cultural landscape, Lemon Sky Studios has emerged as a beacon of creative prowess, defying geographical confines to establish its presence on the global canvas.
Lemon Sky actually registered in the year 2009. However, the team, we've been working together long ago before we actually registered Lemon Sky. We are the first company to actually work on the game art in the year 2006-2005. We have another studio called Igloo Digital Arts that we have an ex-partner from UK that we set up the studio in the year 2006, and then we work on in-game asset all the way until 2009 that the UK partner decided to wind up the company, and we take on the team from the previous company to Lemon Sky. And from that on, we market our own on the game side, and also we work on a long-form TV series.
Starting as a humble venture, the studio directed its early focus towards crafting exceptional 2D and 3D art services tailored for the realm of video games. Art plays a crucial role in gaming studios for a variety of reasons. They show us how art can connect people all around the world, just like a language. Its impact extends to shaping the complete player experience, weaving narratives, and enhancing the market presence and desirability of a video game. The belief in art's universality resonates deeply within Lemon Sky Studios.
Art and even gaming nowadays, I think, is a universal language. If you were surprised to see, kids with different language, they couldn't communicate with each other, but nowadays they're playing the same game. So when they see each other, you see a 6-year-old, 8-year-old kid, when they see each other playing Roblox, then they will start talking and all that. So I think art actually basically is a common, emotional connection. I see Lemon Sky, we put art in the very top place. If you, we have a motto make good art.
They have teamed up with major companies from around the world to create fantastic projects. By combining their creative talents with the visions of these partners such as Naughty Dog and Blizzard, they bring ideas to life in a way that's both unique and impactful.
Back to 20 years ago, not even people know that Malaysia is doing games. Yeah, but nowadays when you are looking on newspaper, yeah, you know that there's quite a lot of AAA title like The Last of Us that we handle as well, Spider-Man's, all this. There's an involvement of Malaysians on it.
So we want to be recognized as like a Pixar, but cover more on the game and other things that when they have a cool idea, they will know who to ask for and come with a professional advice. That's what we are trying to focus on the team, and also let the world know there's a very, very top-graded studio in Malaysia.
Lemon Sky Studios is made up of a talented and diverse group of people. Their team include artists, animators, designers, and technical experts who are passionate about creating incredible arts and projects.
We are not a very small company now, we are about 500 people. A lot of time, for certain projects that are very well known, like for example Blizzard or Naughty Dog, we will check around with the project manager to see who are the fans around the studio. So I think the reason why we do that is because we want to have passionate people, not so much just on the skill set, but also I think sometimes when you're really into something, mentally you will just put in more effort on it. So we will find the right, we will call it fans in the game.
Lemon Sky Studios' journey unfurls like a captivating tale, starting in the heart of Malaysia and unfolding into an international force standing shoulder to shoulder with industry giants. This story of evolution isn't just an echo in the creative corridors of Malaysia, but a proclamation that local studios possess the alchemical ability to sway the global stage. Lemon Sky Studios' ascent stands as a testament to the fact that geography is no constraint for those who wield the palette of innovation with unwavering skill.
I think we spend a lot of efforts on grooming the foundation instead of like doing products. We are slowly getting there. We are keep building on it. Yeah, but the day will come when everything we feel that it's ready and good to show. Yeah, but nevertheless, we'll continue keep farming this sector, make sure that for the future younger generations, that will have more opportunity that they can step into game industry.
That was quite a look at one of Malaysia's prominent support studios. How was the studio visit like, Luis?
At this point, I've been to quite a number of studios, and something that I've learned from each of these studios is that they each have their own aesthetic, which almost feels like it contributes to the work that they do. Lemon Sky Studio utilizes a lot of blacks and yellows and blues to, well, represent the company's colors, but I found that it definitely made the studio seem more professional, as if you walk in and they mean business. But just because the environment seems serious doesn't mean that the people are. The folks over at Lemon Sky couldn't have been more accommodating for both me and my colleague and made us feel right at home.
The previous video did mention the company's long library of games they worked for. You know, for the sake of our viewers, perhaps you can bring some highlight titles from the company.
Lemon Sky has quite a long list of clients, ranging from Activision Blizzard all the way to Square Enix. The most noteworthy titles are that of Tekken 7, Mortal Kombat 11, Marvel's Spider-Man, The Last of Us Remake, Tekken, Gears 5, StarCraft Remastered, and a number of the Final Fantasy series.
Ah, yes, Final Fantasy. I believe they also assisted in making Final Fantasy 7 Remake look very, very gorgeous.
And they did. Square Enix spared no expense in presentation for their titles, so there's no surprise that they hired the absolute best of the best.
Score, one of Malaysia's top talent and major art outsourcing / game development company. Thanks again to Lemon Sky Studios for the interviews. We will take a commercial break for now, but when we come back, we will be touching on another much requested history lesson, so stay tuned. The Japanese role-playing game genre has been very popular in the past few gaming generations. Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, Persona, Monster Hunter, Kingdom Hearts. But there was a time when the genre was very niche. In this feature, we will be talking about the game franchise that put the JRPG genre on the map. Here is our deep dive into the Final Fantasy franchise.
Role-playing games. Here's how the genre works. You take on the role of a hero and their merry group of adventurers as they team up for quests galore. Whether it's saving the world or just solving the inconvenience of the session, RPGs are immersive, story-driven, fun games. Japanese role-playing games are also that, but with their own cultural nuances and unique sensitivities as well as perspectives, obviously from the country of origin. There's a whole bunch of them since the inception of Dragon Quest in the 80s. For now, we are going to focus on one major player in the genre in that same period: Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is important in gaming history because it is the only series to make the niche JRPG genre mainstream, thanks to Part 7, but we'll get to that. First created by Hironobu Sakaguchi when still in Squaresoft during 1987, he and a small team made the RPG inspired by Western fares like Ultima and Wizardry. The title had final in it because the team assumed it would be their last game before the company would file for bankruptcy. Well, it didn't. The first Final Fantasy was a huge hit for the Famicom and Nintendo Entertainment System, introducing a novel narrative for its time, stellar graphics, and a familiar but still fun RPGing turn-based combat gameplay. That continued on with Final Fantasy II in 1988 and Final Fantasy III in 1990, with the latter introducing the job system, where your 4 characters can change classes to suit the battle scenario and dungeon at any time. Final Fantasy IV for the Super Nintendo set the standard for future games, with its predominant archetype for heroes, adventure structure, and engaging story. It also introduced the active time battle system, where combat happens in real time, where attacks are initiated once a turn bar is filled up, and requires you to be fast with menu fiddling for attacks, spells, and whatnot. The ATB system was used for many Final Fantasy games from here on out. Then we have Final Fantasy V in 1992, which brought back the job system, but bigger, better, and more flexible. And then we have Final Fantasy VI, arguably the peak of the series, due to its colorful, varied cast members, its plot and fast-paced combat with a flexible magic system, and a very memorable villain. Remember when we brought up Final Fantasy VII a few minutes ago and in that last PlayStation episode? While it's not the best game, it's the most important one. Lots have been spent on the game's marketing, carefully crafted to showcase its visuals and bits of its story more than the actual gameplay, and it paid off big time. Final Fantasy VII sold PlayStations. It put Squaresoft on the map as a de facto RPG and game-making kings. Final Fantasy VII is so monumental to Squaresoft and Square Enix's success that it's the only one in the series to get a full-on remake with an astronomical budget 23 years later. And from there on, different PlayStation consoles had their own Final Fantasy games. There's one of the Flying Campers and an addictive card game. There's one that is a throwback to the old fantasy setting NES titles, but more epic. There's even one that used the PlayStation 2 tech and went back to turn-based combat. There's even one that's an online RPG, 2 in fact, and a lot more mothership entries. Final Fantasy XIII was the first to go multi-platform, and the one that arguably set the series on a downward slope. And then you have the spin-offs and side games, too numerous to mention.
Chaos.
The series' legacy still carries on even after 36 years, influencing many others to make games of that genre. As such, the Final Fantasy brand is really iconic in gaming history, even if it's not as strong in this current generation of gaming. But don't take our word for it. We asked a few key figures in charge of the brand why it's lasted this long.
僕は多分どこまで行ってもファイナルファンタジーシリーズのファンボーイであるっていうベースは抜けないんだなっていうのが今回作ってみてやっぱり思ったところで、ファイナルファンタジーシリーズって歴史が長いしいろんなチャレンジをしてきたからこそ やっぱプレイしたそれぞれにとってのファイナルファンタジーっていうものが強く存在しているのはまあ事実で、僕も自分で実際ファイナルファンタジーを作る時には挑戦っていうのをできるだけやめないようにこう14も16もやってきてるので、そこはまあやっぱり僕自身がファンの一人だからっていうところがすごくベースにあるんだなっていうのを改めて感じました今回。
Final Fantasy is the fans. You can't spell Final Fantasy without fans, right? It's the players that have supported us from the beginning. They're the reason that we continue making the games. If no one was buying the games and no one was enjoying them, there would be no more Final Fantasies. It would be final.
Wow, that segment does take me back. I remember a time when Final Fantasy VII was really the talk of the town in Malaysia when the PlayStation 1 debuted. The graphics, the music, the characters, the story, I have to confess, I don't think I heard anyone talking about the gameplay in the same breath.
That was just how powerful the late 90s marketing was for the game. Before even YouTube came into the picture, or myself for that matter, video game publishers had to use print ads and TV spots to get their games across. The fact that Final Fantasy VII was PlayStation exclusive for the time did help financially, and I'm pretty sure the 40 million marketing budget is worth a lot more now than it is, than it was back then, thanks to, inflation.
100% it is, okay? But let's stop the money talk and, shift over to your own experience. Have you had any, experience with Final Fantasy games, Luis?
I've dabbled. I did play a lot of these spin-offs on PSP. I did play a fighting game spin-off called Dissidia, which had Final Fantasy heroes and villains duking it out anime style. I did like the Dragon Ball Z 3D fighting games, so it was more or less the same, pretty much, except with prettier boys and lots of belt buckles and zippers. I should also mention I did touch Triple Triad on the mobile, but I didn't know it actually came from Final Fantasy VIII until after this video aired. The whole Final Fantasy series and its nuances is more the expertise of the disembodied voice, Jonathan. What I can tell you, however, Yifa, is that, well, he's definitely an expert on the series and JRPGs, on one of the most prominent ones in the country, that I know of at least. Apart from fighting games, in fact, a lot of these notes and information about Final Fantasy I got thanks to him, so thank you, John.
Alright, so these games look so good and nostalgic to play. If anyone wants to replay these games, how can they go on about doing that?
Well, they're in luck. You may not be able to play them on the original consoles that they came out on, but you can play them on modern consoles and on PC. Square Enix has released a Final Fantasy Pixel remastered series from parts 1 to 6, with not just better pixel art, but also amazing quality of life upgrades, better user interfaces, and boost features that make the game easier or harder, depending on if you're a masochist or not.
I'm sure there are many viewers who may want to dive into Final Fantasy as newbies. If you have to pick one or two games to start with, what would they be?
I would probably have to say, if you're looking for a classic 16-bit pure Final Fantasy RPG experience, then I'd suggest you get the remastered Final Fantasy IV. If you want a prettier 3D Final Fantasy to play, then you can go for Final Fantasy X. It's got quite a story, a fun turn-based combat system, and insanely large grid-based leveling system. And it will take up a lot of your hours with a plethora of side quests.
Ah, yes, I have seen Final Fantasy X, the one with Tidus and Yuna. It really has, that South Pacific and Thailand seaside vibe and setting. But, fantasy, like all this information overload, kind of made us want to take a breather and process it all. So guess what? We're cutting to a commercial break and we'll be right back. And we are back. As we are on the month of September, Luis, are there any new game releases to look forward to this month or even the next?
Quite a lot actually. We have a fighting game called Mortal Kombat 1, which features a lot of classic characters from past Mortal Kombat games, but with a new twist to the storyline, and a bunch of single player and online modes, and a pretty neat commercial starring prominent wrestler turned actor Dave Bautista. There's also Payday 3, a multiplayer first-person shooter where you rob banks, and it's a lot harder than it sounds. We also have a new Dragon Quest game that's an action role-playing game, and EA Sports FC 24, a new football game from Electronic Arts.
So we have a 2D fighting game with ninjas and magic kung fu people, one that's M-rated. So please don't let your children see it on action. A multiplayer shooter, a football game, and an action RPG. That last one, is this similar to RPGs?
Yes, but not quite. Your traditional role-playing game is heavy on customer character customization and story, and a methodical combat system where you can take your time with it. Action RPGs are more fast-paced and loot-driven.
Okay, so if you want to know more about this year's best action RPG, you can tune in to our old main game episode available on RTM Klik or on YouTube via Kakuchopurei's channel.
Thank you, Aoife, and I think we've danced around our upcoming topic long enough.
Yes, we have. Without further ado, here are our top picks of great role-playing games to buy this year. Take it away, Jonathan.
Role-playing games have become mainstream thanks to a combination of big-budget open-world fantasy and sci-fi titles, the tabletop analog phenomenon that is Dungeons & Dragons, and big Japanese RPG names like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. But what are the best titles in the genre for the illustrious year of 2023? A year so packed with bangers, of the non-mash kind. We'll just cherry-pick our top favorites. We have to bring up Baldur's Gate 3. Very high peak PC gaming numbers, especially for a single player title. You play a character of your choosing, created from scratch, as you have to take out a parasite in your brain before you turn into a demon squid thing. Be it by yourself or with friends online. This one's based on the Dungeons & Dragons license and features an established world, but still has loads of charisma, open-ended gameplay, and numerous solutions to conundrums, all originally tailored. You can either just brute force your way through combat or smooth talk your way out of trouble, or just stack crates like a boss to get through barricades as not intended by the game devs. Not a bad way to spend premium price on gaming after all. Now, if you want a game so vast and set in its own original universe, you have Starfield for that. Made by Bethesda Games, the same people who did the Elder Scrolls series, this sci-fi odyssey of an RPG lets you explore, shoot lots of space aliens, and even talk your way through its many challenges. With lush worlds, a ton of character customization, a ship you can pilot, and a pretty deep plot that goes to places you don't expect, this is definitely the massive single-player role-playing game Skyrim fans want. And even if you don't play Skyrim, the galaxy exploration aspect and fun narrative will entice your fresh mind. If you ever wanted to be a spaceman, Starfield has you covered and then some. It's available on Xbox Game Pass for you to try out. Last but not least, Sea of Stars is what happens when you decide to spend 5 years creating a true successor to classic 90s JRPGs like Chrono Trigger. Sea of Stars pits you as two Solstice warriors on a journey to defeat the armies of the Fleshmancer in a very lush, colourful fantasy world. It's got a captivating plot with new twists and turns, charming cast of characters, and a nifty battle system that goes by really quick and seamlessly. Exploring the world is very flexible and fun, and you don't even have to spend time leveling up as the game is meticulously detailed and planned out so you can progress the story and partake in epic boss fights with what you have, your smarts and your will. It's the kind of experience that reminds you of a more classic time, but now modernized for a current age. Whether you want a limitless space to explore, or just play through a well-paced story of destiny with 16-bit style graphics, but modernized, 2023 is packed to the gill with role-playing games. These three offerings are worth your time, money, and undying attention.
Wow, those are 3 big titles worth checking out this year, all of them role-playing games. So, Luis, which ones are your favorite?
I'm just going to have to say Starfield. As a massive fan of Bethesda's Elder Scrolls series, specifically Skyrim, Starfield is essentially the same, but the space version of it. But at the same time, so much more. Instead of swords and shields, you have guns and jetpacks. Instead of using horses to traverse the land, you use fully customizable spaceships to sail beyond the stars. The universe in which Starfield takes place in is gargantuan, and there's so much room for endless replayability.
So in movie terms and vibe, is it more like Interstellar and Ad Astra?
Kind of, but not really. It's not your typical run-of-the-mill sci-fi space exploration game, as it's more narratively driven. Space travel and space exploration is more used as a vehicle to help progress the story rather than being the actual subject of the main plotline. If you're somebody who loves to self-insert themselves into alternate realities, then Starfield may be the sci-fi world for you. I've actually just completed my review of the game, and which you can go check over on our website at Kakuchopurei.com, but I do have to say that Starfield is the peak of Bethesda's RPG craftsmanship.
Space is indeed the final frontier. But then again, so are the many fantasy realms of the imaginative minds of game makers like Square Enix. And with that said, our fated journey has come to an end. At least for this episode, the world of role-playing games is still vast and there's a lot to uncover. We've barely scratched on the surface. Computer role-playing games, noteworthy creators apart from Sakaguchi-san, even the indie developers who owe their careers to the everlasting genre, but perhaps we'll save those for a future quest. I'm your host, Aoife.
And I'm Lewis from Kakuchopurei.
And may your own fantasies be anything but final. Goodbye.